In the previous market, you couldn't lose when it came to pricing because theoretically the market would bail you out if
They would
you
save you. Yeah.
yeah if you undervalued the property. There was enough demand and a shortage of supply, so you'd get people competing for it, and you couldn't overprice a property because values were going up so quickly that the market would have caught up to your price before your listing
So what
expired.
you're saying is, if you priced it low, the market would help you because it would go up. If you priced it high, the market would,
Everyone was a hero. Yeah.
So basically, you didn't have to know shit.
Correct.
All right. There you go. So now, hello, everyone. Today we're here with Sam DiCaro, my director of operations. We have some interesting information for you. Yesterday we were involved in a huge, presentation on how to thrive in this market, and we got some very much needed intel about what the concerns and the difficulties that agents are having. And one of the things that really was surprising was pricing. Agents were concerned or questioning on how to best approach the pricing of properties in a market where prices can show some stresses, which means that they're not necessarily going up, they're going down a little bit. In certain areas, there's more competition out there, more homes for sale. What do you do? How do you do it, Sam? That was interesting, was it not?
Yeah. I think what came out of it was a lot of people sharing that in the previous market, you couldn't lose when it came to pricing because theoretically the market would bail you out if
They would
you
save you. Yeah.
yeah if you undervalued the property. There was enough demand and a shortage of supply, so you'd get people competing for it, and you couldn't overprice a property because, like I said, the market would bail you out in the sense that values were going up so quickly that the market would have caught up to your price before your listing
So what
expired.
you're saying is, if you priced it low, the market would help you because it would go up. If you priced it high, the market,
Everyone was a hero. Yeah.
So basically, you didn't have to know shit.
Correct.
All right. There you go. So now,
Everybody was a hero. You couldn't lose.
so basically, what was happening is there was a lot of order taking going on, and so we're having fun with that because you couldn't make a mistake.
No.
If you priced it lower, there would be people rushing to the property because there was that urgency that if I don't buy today, tomorrow the prices are higher, so I better buy. And so there was a ton of people lined up buying properties because they were afraid. That's gone, is it not?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
And
right.
so the question I have for you, because you're right, one way or the other, if you were undervalued, you were going to get the competition, and if you were overvalued, the market was going up so quick that the price, your list price would catch up to the market before, or the market would catch up to your list price before it expired.
You are right. You are very right in what you're saying, that there was the market would help you, the property would be sold. But I want to stress one thing, and this is where people don't really get the full picture. Number one, you really don't make money when you sell real estate. You make money when you buy. You got to buy the right property. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that although the market would bail you out, what many people don't understand is that there was a huge propensity to sell for less than you could have. That doesn't mean you weren't going to sell. What it means is that by not reaching the largest audience, by not selling to the right and ideal buyer who has the most money, you would still sell, but you wouldn't realize how much money you lost. And so I think that that is something that has to be really taken into consideration when we talk about this. Because now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I'm getting is all the people who are selling are saying, I need to get the most money for my home, and I'm not going to take a chance on it. I have to get the most.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
And so there's no doubt that the ideal buyer, the person that says I love this property, will pay more than the person that says, I can make it work. So there is that variable that needs to be taken into
That's in
account
any market.
as far exactly as
That's in
far
any
as what
market.
that ultimate end result is. Did they end up selling it for as much as they otherwise could have, regardless of whether they had, multiple offers or not? So the question I have for you now, because the dynamic we can agree has changed.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a lot more properties for sale, a lot more homes on the market competing with each other, and prices have gone down in virtually all areas of the market, some more than others. And I guess the sellers are saying, hey, this is not good. I want to make sure that I get the most money for my home.
Okay. And so in this current market environment, we'll call it a declining or a down market. What would you say is the ideal strategy, or how would you approach that pricing conversation?
You know, I'm seeing a lot of agents, and the concern that they had is that they meet with sellers who are saying, "Hey, I I don't want to sell for that price. I need more money. I need more than that. I want more money than that." Than that being the price of other homes on the air in the area. And I think that's important to acknowledge and understand. And then you have to respond with, how does the need for more money increase the value of your property?
Well, it doesn't.
Well, no, it doesn't. You sure?
It doesn't. But that okay. So if we're currently in an environment where we're seeing that values are declining, and I wanted to get the most money, how would I go about doing that? And we know it's not about just throwing a number out there. So if I want to ensure that I'm selling for more money, how can I do that in a market where values are declining?
Well, I can give you the answer, but we're talking today to try and help realtors who are challenged with that, with how to price it, because what their challenge was is they go and talk to a homeowner, and that homeowner says, well, we're seeing that, let's say the average price is $1 million in that area. Okay, and there's enough properties saying that they're selling for that price point. They say, well, why don't we try 1.1 or 1.2? Right?
Yeah.
That's the homeowners, because I need more money. Now, if there's other choices that are at $1 million in and around that, or that's the properties that have sold what they're selling for, how does that make sense?
It's what I want.
Okay, that's great. But how does that make sense to put it at that price? Because I know what I want. I know what you want. I know what we all want. And that's great. Why do you only want 1.2? Why don't you want 2.5? I mean, that would be better, wouldn't it? Would it help you more?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no substance to what you want. It's what you can get. What we have to do is simply this, is put ourselves in the buyer's position and say, look, if I'm going to buy a home in this area, I'm going to look at everything that's for sale, and looking at what's for sale right now, which property would I buy? It's simple. That is the perspective you have to put yourself into to make sure you get the most money. Because what has simply been discussed right now is that the market is declining. So if today the prices are here and tomorrow they're here, right? Do you want to sell today at a higher price or wait till tomorrow at a lower price?
Okay. So I think this is the key point that I think we need to communicate, because in the previous market you could not lose because values were going up.
You're still losing because it would save you. You would still make the sale. This is from an agent perspective. That I would venture to say that, yeah, a lot of homeowners lost, but the sale will still happen.
Yes. Okay. So we understand there the importance of the ideal buyer. What I'm talking about here is in a upward market, there is no perceived loss because you get the property sold and whatever. We can argue that if it wasn't the ideal buyer who would have paid more, then they lost. But in this case, there's
A
no
sale would
perceived
occur.
loss.
Yes.
Okay. In a down market where every day that passes is costing more money, would you say then that in order to get more money, the key is getting it sold sooner rather than later?
Well, I mean, let's explain that first of all. Every day costs you more money. We're talking about the seller, all right? So if you have someone that's willing to take your $1 million property, that's the value of the homes that have sold, and list it at 1.1 or 1.2, then there's a cost to you. And the cost is that the market is changing and it's coming down. And so you're waiting and the price is getting lower. And now when you see that you can sell it for an inflated price, you're going to have to go to the market price, but the market price is no longer a million. Now it's 950 or 900. So that experiment, instead of getting you more money, is going to get you less money.
Right. So what you're saying is that it becomes a moving target and you're chasing the market because we'll give that example. If the value of the property was $1 million and you say, well, I want to try 1.1, 30 days go by, you don't see the activity, you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to reduce it to 1, except it's no longer 1, it's 950 or 9. And so theoretically, if you had just listed it at the 1 to begin with, you would have got more money than you can get now.
So in a market that's going down, you want to be the next property to sell because the next property is selling for less than the last one, and the one after that's going to sell for even lower. So that's kind of the theory behind it. But it's worse than that. It's worse than that because by not selling right away when you come on the market and being 30 days and 40 days and 50 days on the market, people are going to say, what's wrong with your property? It's sitting there, and they have concerns. And so when there's so much selection and you have a home that's sitting there and is not selling, you say, oh boy, I better, stay away from that. So is that going to help you get more money or less money?
Less.
But again, we go back to the original conversation. You want to get the most money. So
Sure.
this thing. Now, so why are we talking about it this way? Why are we talking about the pricing? Because, in our market, we're in Toronto in the GTA, there are, 80,000 realtors. And I'm going to assure you that someone will take that property at 1.1, 1.2. They'll take it at 1.3. They'll take it at 1.5. There are agents that will do that. Now,
Why would they? Well, we could say maybe they're not as
some of them are not experienced.
and don't know how to evaluate property correctly.
Right.
Maybe some are doing it to.
Yes. And that's what I don't want to get to, but I have to.
Yeah.
All right. So look, in a competitive industry, agents should, I guess, be very forward with the information and share it with you because it's going to cost you money. But, you ask yourself, why would an agent take a property at a higher price than it is worth if they don't think they're going to sell it? Well, anybody ever go fishing? Yeah. And you put that worm on the hook. There you go. Your home becomes a worm. So, you're doing open houses. You're going to meet some people who are going to buy a property, not necessarily your property. So they get business from it. They have a sign. They're going to get calls. So this is a way to use your home to generate business for them. It's not going to help you, but it will help them. And that's why they might take it. But I'm not talking about from the agent perspective right now. I'm talking about from the client perspective. Is how does it make sense to you if we have an increase in inventory? I think year over year, we're up 65% more properties for sale in our market. More choice. You have to be aware of, quote unquote, the other properties for sale, the competition.
Yeah. So I guess in addition to using, the seller's property to dangle the carrot and hopefully
Generate
a
business.
bit of business for themselves, there's also people that do it because once you're locked up to a contract, they can beat you up until they get you down to the.
Oh,
to the
that's
price.
unfortunate too. So I don't want to go into that, but if you are someone who needs to sell, and where you start is only going to hurt you, because if you're locked into a contract and then you have to sell by a certain date and you still are under that contract, then you're going to have to come down from the price that you started and were asking initially. And the problem with that is that first of all, you're sitting on the market longer than you have to. Secondly, you have to reduce your price, and thirdly, the person that you're dealing with obviously is not going to be pushing your property and advertising it and marketing to more people. So in the end, it becomes a stressful situation. You have to sell it. You're not necessarily getting any benefit from the reach and the experience because they've had you sit on the market for a longer time. and they're not going to spend money at a higher price to market your property because they're not going to sell it, and you end up selling for a lot less than otherwise you could have. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous approach, and I think a lot of people aren't aware that they're going down that path. And so my concern is for the sellers that they're not aware, and for the agents who really are having a hard time valuating properties or are afraid to be honest and upfront with the facts to the client. So they're just going to take orders, so to speak. Whatever you want, I'll put down and we'll see what happens. That's the mistake.
Okay, so I actually observed a conversation you had with one of the agents there at the seminar yesterday who had communicated this. They said they took a listing that they knew wasn't going to sell at the price they took it at because the seller said that's what they wanted. And you asked them a very important question. You said, do you care about your client? They said, of course I do. They said, and yet you were willing to knowingly hurt them.
Oh, the question I asked them is, when did the seller get their real estate license?
Yes,
that was the
but
question.
the point-
I was being sarcastic, right?
But
Because
the
when the
point-
seller starts telling you how to price a property, the tables have shifted.
Fair enough. But you asked them if they cared about their client, and they said, of course they did. And you said, but yet you willingly and knowingly did something that you knew was going to hurt them. Because if you ask them now, after 3 months or after 5 months or 6 months or however long they've been on the market, can they get the same money that they could have that long ago? And the answer is no. And so this is why we're talking about this. It's not just to do transactions. It's to prevent the seller from.
To be fair, that was a nice young lady, and it wasn't coming from a bad place. All they were doing was trying to appease the seller by doing what they asked, and sometimes that, well, all the time it doesn't work. If you're going to an expert, and they recommend you do something, and then you say, no, I'm not going to do that. Why are you going to the expert? I mean, the expert is there for a reason.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, just the fact that she approached you with how to handle that situation shows that she wasn't. It wasn't a matter of not wanting to do what was best for them. It was a matter of being caught in a situation that I think a lot of agents are finding themselves in right now, because the market has shifted to an environment that a lot of people, when you consider how long that upward trajectory has been for, haven't experienced, right? And so,
well, you're right, and I think what you're saying is that there's a lack of training and learning on how to handle a situation like that,
or exposure to and exposure to this sort of environment. Now, so we've established then that in a down market, pricing a property high based on what relevant comps are telling us, or what the market is indicating values like, or properties like that are selling for, is a dangerous game, because every day that passes is costing the seller more money, and assuming that the agent is investing anything, it's costing them more money. So what would be, if you're approaching a listing today, how are you approaching your pricing strategy for a property in this environment, knowing that
well, I mean, you're an expert. You have to know what's going on in the area. You have to look at all the options that a buyer has, look at it from that buyer perspective, and make sure that your property is positioned to be the next one to sell.
So how would I do that?
Well, it's a matter of price, showability, and closing date. Everything has to come into play, and that's what you want to do. You want to be the next one to sell, because there are more people coming on the market every day, not want to sell, have to sell, right? And that's the problem, is because even though you say, well, I paid off my home, or I don't have to sell, well, if the person you're competing against can't pay their mortgage, or lost their job, or is being transferred, or is unfortunately getting the divorce or something like that, they have to sell. Well, they're going to do what they need to, and they're going to be pricing it accordingly. And if they have to go lower, they will. So if they're going to go lower, you have to meet them there, or you're not going to sell. Therefore, you lead, you don't follow.
So what you're saying is, even if I'm in a position where I don't need to sell, I'm still at the mercy of my neighbor's motivation to sell. So if getting the most money is important to me, I am in a rush in a market like this. So,
You want to beat up the neighbors? Is that what you're saying?
no,
No. Okay.
no,
Okay.
no,
No,
we
we don't
can't
want to
do
do
that.
that. No. No.
So, is it safe then to say, if we use the original example that we use of $1 million, where the seller said, like, let's try 1.1, if we were to now price it, more honestly, more according to what the recent properties have sold for, being the million that we said, by pricing it at $1 million, there's a greater likelihood of us getting a more reasonable offer sooner and therefore selling it for more money versus pricing it higher and then taking more time when the values are lower.
Well, absolutely. And so, what you have to do is put yourself in the shoes of a buyer. And so, if you see, let's say there's 5 properties, they're all asking $1 million, and you're going to come on the market. If you put it at $1 million, you're probably not going to get $1 million. I mean, if there's 5 properties, who's going to give it to me for less? That's what a buyer will do. They'll negotiate. So in that case over there, the next property is probably going to sell for 975 or for 950. So price it at 975 or 950. Give yourself the edge, because the other ones, they're all competing for that business. So why don't you lead? That's how you get the most money, because it's about a race to get the next sale, because the one after that is going to be even lower.
Okay.
That's simple.
Okay. Fair enough. So it's timing and
Understanding where you're going. You have to look ahead. You don't look behind. You know where you came from. Was it higher 6 months ago, the price?
yes,
6 months from now, it'll be lower. So sooner is better. Let's get it done.
assuming everything it remains the
Assuming we're going in the same direction. Yes.
yeah.
Obviously, there's always change that could occur, and we understand that, and we're obviously prepared for that change. But when we're talking at a depreciating market, people who are living in the past are the ones who are going to be hurt the most.
Okay. So we know that there's a few strategies that you can employ when it comes to pricing a listing, and we've already discussed 2 of them. One of which is pricing it high with room to negotiate down. The other one is pricing it in line with what the market has indicated the value
should
to be based on recent activity, and that will be the better of those 2 options in order to get it sold sooner for more money rather than later, if values will be lower later. The other one, and this was the preferred
Yes.
strategy during the peak of the market, and that is the multiple offer date with pricing
well,
it.
1 second though, you're saying it the wrong way. No. Yeah, pricing it below the value today, and people called it a multiple offer, and this is where you have a problem when you call it a multiple offer date. There is no such thing as a multiple offer date, especially in this market. The challenge when you're pricing a property below the current prices is that the appetite of the buyers to compete and pay a much higher price is not there. So it's very dangerous, especially if you don't have the reach, the audience of buyers that are going to see it. Because let's face it, it's not the same. We're on a podcast, and there's some podcasts that get a couple of viewers, and there's some that get millions of viewers. Well, if you don't get millions of viewers, you're going to have a harder chance of getting that, best result if you're selling a property. So there's a lot of factors involved in that, but pricing it lower is very dangerous in a market where market prices are going lower. And if you don't get any offers on that date that you're holding just to see what comes in, then where do you go from there? And people are going to say, what's wrong with the property?
Okay, so a couple of things I did want to point out there is as far as that strategy is concerned, typically the approach to it is grossly undervaluing the property in hopes of generating a bidding war to drive the price up. Now
Yeah, that happened in the hot market.
Yeah.
And that was what agents were doing because they were order takers. They had no strategy. They did that. They knew that it would work. It was very simple. They would get it sold, and whatever it sold for, it would be more than the asking price. And so that's fine. Move on.
Okay. So now again, in this environment, because people are still looking at that as a potential strategy, and we could argue that we don't recommend it in this environment, but still, the reason for that is if you're going to grossly undervalue the property with the expectation of selling it for considerably over that price, it becomes a dangerous game because if there isn't that appetite to compete, even if you were to get over the asking price, the question is now, is it going to be enough to close the gap
It won't be.
between the seller's expectation
So,
and
so let me ask you this: was this strategy used when the market was hot by every agent out there?
yep.
All right. And at the Thrive seminar that we were guest speakers at, did we find that the issue was pricing? Yeah, that's why we're here today talking about it, right?
Yeah, a lot of people had concerns about
So they
pricing.
all knew about that, pricing it low and getting multiple offers and everything else. Yet pricing was the issue. What that tells you is it's not working,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not setting it up right and everything else. It's a nightmare. Listen, this is your biggest investment. You can't take it lightly. And I think homeowners now, sellers, they understand that. That's why they're not going to just go with any realtor. And these order takers that were out there that weren't willing to invest in themselves to get the knowledge, invest in marketing to get the reach out there, they're being exposed. They're being now challenged to do what's necessary. And the reality is, unfortunately, they don't have the knowledge or the budgets to go out there and do what they need to. And it's hard to catch up because when the good times were there, they didn't put enough away like the little squirrels do.
Well, I think this is the reason why we're having this conversation is because at the time people were doing what they were told worked, what they were able to observe worked, and so they were following that.
No, I think they were doing what they could do to work. Everybody thought getting a real estate license was cashing in fast money, low hanging fruit, and you know what? There's a lot of work involved and a lot of challenges. One of the challenges I think people don't even realize is that getting the most money is important, of course, but then when you're selling, you're also moving somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And when you move somewhere else, you got to find another property. So you have to find another property. But what the biggest challenge that we're finding right now is that if you don't match up those closing dates, there's problems out there because if you promise to buy a property and you have to give them $1 million and you don't have $1 million on closing, what happens?
Sure. There's that's a whole other topic altogether, and
It's all intertwined, but the key here is that I think with questions that we're dealing with, the ultimate question is, I need more money for my home. That's what the client wants, right?
yeah. So we're looking at these pricing strategies. We've established that pricing it too high is not the way to go because we're chasing the market. Pricing it in and around where the value is expected to be based on recent comps would be the ideal strategy. But the question I had is essentially, is there still a place in this market for that? I will correct the language because I previously referred to it as a multiple offer date, which I think is wrong because
It is wrong.
psychologically you're implying that on this date we will be looking at multiple offers. And if that doesn't happen, now you've overpromised and underdelivered. So the way to look at that strategy is not a multiple offer date or an offer date, because that still implies that there's going to be offers. It should be just a hold off on offers, meaning we are not entertaining anything until this date, so as to give the buying public an opportunity to be aware of the property, come in and have a look at it. And if there is a demand for it, compete for it. Okay. So is there still a place for a hold off on offer strategy in this market? And I believe yes.
There is in situations where there isn't a lot of inventory in those areas where you have a property in a location where you're looking for a more unique buyer and somebody needs to get the property sold quickly. So you want to, give everybody an opportunity to see it. And yes, there's an opportunity for that.
Okay. So let's say there is a place for this strategy in this environment, and it's dependent on the variables of that particular property, because we could say if you've got a property that comes up in an area that very, very rarely do we see product in, then you might want to do that strategy versus a property that, is in a subdivision with like 40 other units available. There's no urgency for anybody to wait for your offer date. I'll just submit an offer on one of the other ones that's
Correct.
currently available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as far as pricing, right? With that particular property that we would employ a hold off on offers, are you grossly undervaluing that property, or
No,
are you
I don't think you grossly undervalue. You price it where you think it's at the market, which would mean that it's attractive because you're looking at what's happening in the market and you're putting it at that price. But because the area has a lot of demand and people will see that it's a fair price, that's how you get more, right? You have to think when I think something's a fair price, I'll pay more. If I think it's overpriced, even if they come down in price, I don't get the same feeling and I never feel like I got a good deal. You go some of those markets when you travel overseas over there and you give you half price off, you walk away say, I don't know if I got a good deal, right?
okay? So what you've explained there is the difference between pricing a property aggressively, meaning significantly under what we feel the value to be, versus pricing it attractively.
Yes.
Now, if we're putting an offer date there, it's not because we're necessarily anticipating that there's going to be this bidding war frenzy,
No.
but more so to, as a protectionist approach, to prevent it from selling
Well,
too
to
soon.
give the
to
peace
wrong
of
buyer.
mind to the sellers to show that, look, we put it out there, we marketed the property, we've had people come in without any pressure. They've had a chance to come and see it at their convenience. So you're giving them the time of that period. And so when you have the opportunity to look at offers, it's not just 2 hours or 6 hours or 1 day on the market. It's been on the market for 5 days, 7 days, a
Enough
week.
time for people to know about it.
And they have now a good indication, a good pulse on the market that they know that if an offer does come in, that they've had the opportunity to make sure that they're not giving their home away. There's a lot of value in that. That is huge because peace of mind is incredibly important when you're talking about your largest investment.
So the protectionist approach is simply to ensure that we have not sold it too soon to the wrong buyer.
Peace of mind,
Right?
correct?
Giving the market an opportunity to see if somebody else would be, have a greater appreciation and be willing to pay more for it.
Agreed.
That's how you protect them.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
it takes courage to do that. It takes courage. It takes knowledge. It takes, I guess, self-respect to go in there and talk to the sellers and let them know what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And that's the difference. When you're talking about this kind of decision that's huge for families, being honest, being upfront, letting them know where the prices are and where they're going and what their decisions can do to their bottom line, that's what experts do. If you went to the doctor and they told you everything is fine every time, there'd be nobody who'd be getting any treatments for some ailments they have, and their lives would be compromised. We don't want that to happen in real estate.
and I think probably one of the things that's important you touched on there is it doesn't matter really like what market, whether we're an up market, a down market, or whether you decide to go with one of the three pricing strategies, which is pricing it high or pricing it low or pricing it right on. The fundamental variable of getting the most money is important to you is not only in this market selling sooner rather than later, but ensuring that the person that we have across the table from us when it comes time to negotiate is the ideal buyer, is the person that will have a greater appreciation and more money to spend, because that is the greatest negotiation tool that we could ever have.
Absolutely.
And that is a function of exposing that product to the largest audience of buyers to identify the person who would be willing to.
Well, I think the people being the sellers want to get the most money for their property. And I give a simple example. I don't, it's not hard. I mean, if I were to buy one lottery ticket, I got a chance to win the lottery. If you buy 12 million lottery tickets every week, you got a better chance. And we want to increase our chances when we're selling our property for the most money. So yes, you have to reach more people. That's in any market. But in a down market where you have those pressures, you want to make sure that you don't leave any money on the table because it really makes a big difference. And the other thing is that should someone buy or sell first, or what's the best angle? Do they buy first or sell first? In a down market, arguably the prices are going to be lower afterwards, right? So if you sell now, you can buy for a lower price, right? And that would be make more sense to sell first. You have more money and you have time to look, and prices, if they go down, then you're going to take advantage of it. But there are people out there who are not at a point in their life where they want to compromise.
I was just going to say, I guess that depends on, the person's like risk tolerance there. Are they more worried about,
Right.
are they
Well,
more worried about, being homeless or finding the ideal
Well,
property?
they're not going to be homeless, but I mean, if someone is, retiring, or they've been to 3 or 4 homes, they know exactly what they want and what they need. For them, it's finding the ideal property, and that's important. So they will commit to buying a property, which makes total sense. But that puts them in a more difficult situation than the other consumers, because once you've sold, you know how much money you have, you know your closing date, you can go buy a property. But if you buy first in a market where there's a lot more competition, then you've already set the price you're paying, you've already set the closing date, and now you have to match that with your current property. So you have to sell it. You have to sell it by that date, because most people don't have $1 million in cash to buy a property if they don't sell theirs. Now, if you're left hanging that way and you don't have that money, you can get sued and you can lose the property. You can get in big trouble, and we don't want that to happen. But that's what does happen, and we've seen a lot of court cases now where clients are suing the buyers who haven't closed on time because they didn't get their money. They can't buy their home, the next home, and they're getting sued by the other person. So it becomes a total nightmare. And especially if you're retiring or dealing with, other things in your life, you don't want that. Now, luckily, we have programs in place where that's not going to happen, and we have the experience to make sure that they line up and you get both homes closed. But a lot of people don't have that option. If the bank is not going to give you a bridge loan, and by the way, the banks are being very tough, very stringent about your qualifications and your credit score and how much equity you have and your cash flow. So a lot of people are getting refused those bridge loans, and there's going to be some trouble for those people. And that's why we're doing what we do to help our clients.
Yeah, looking at that whole debate of buying and selling in an up market, down market. You were talking about theoretically in a down market to do that upgrade is more ideal. Theoretically, if you got, let's say, for ease of numbers, if values were to have come down, 10%, a $2 million property would come down 200,000, a $1 million property would come down to 100,000. In which case, if I'm selling, I'm not losing 100 grand on my sale. I'm gaining 100 grand on my purchase,
Absolutely.
right? So there's a lot of variables.
So what we're saying here then, it's not necessarily a bad time.
No,
Right? For
it's
someone upgrading in a down market, for them, it's actually advantageous. It's better to upgrade in a down market than it is in an up market.
I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of variables to consider, and depending on someone's situation, they may find that the lens from which they're looking at this market may not be as bad as
Oh,
maybe
no,
somebody
absolutely
else's,
not.
right? So, and if I'm looking at that whole concept of buying and selling, if we look at the previous market that was deemed a good market, a lot of people weren't making the move, not because they were worried about being able to sell their property. There was a paralysis that set in because they were worried about, where am I going to go?
Couldn't find something else. Yeah.
Right.
And one other thing, actually, when you get into the higher price points, when you get into homes that are, 3, 4, 5 million plus, the reality is they don't come down 10% like $1 million home. They come
Right.
down actually more. So the difference is actually much smaller. And there's an opportunity for someone who's looking at upgrading in this market. They should be laughing all the way to the bank, so to speak.
There's always going to be a much larger pool of buyers in that
Yeah.
lower price point or entry level price
Well,
point.
the reality is that, in every transaction, there's somebody who's going to be better off and worse off. There's a winner and a loser. You hate to say it that way, but if somebody's making money, then the other person's losing money. But there's always opportunity in any market. So the key here is to educate yourself, know your options. And if you take the path that's going to be best for you, you'll be better off. How does that happen? You need someone who can guide you that, you need a good guide to take you through the forest and make sure that you have all your options in front of you and you take the right one.
Yeah, maybe we could wrap up with that. Obviously, pricing is critical, but it is only one
It's
piece of the overall puzzle,
one
right?
piece of the pie. Yes.
So, there's a lot of variables that would go into play. Yeah, positioning it from a price perspective, um, in the best possible way to be the next one to sell, along with making sure that you're exposing that product to the largest pool of potential buyers, and also looking at what makes the most sense in the overall move. Because I think you've said this before when you've heard people referring to, you know, I was speaking to a buyer or speaking to a seller, or whatever you said. Like, don't look at people as buyers or sellers. Look at them as people that need to make a move.
And they're typically buying and selling. So that's the irony of it
A
all.
buyer is a seller is a buyer.
They're all the same person. The other thing I'm going to leave you with is this. You know, a lot of things that have changed in this world, and if there's one thing that is constant, it's change. And you have to keep up to date. And so if you're not the type of person who's keeping up to date with everything that's going on, you're not going to be able to understand your options. And you need to have someone who's going to be with you along on your journey, that knows what's going on, knows what's happening, what's coming, and can give you all the information you need to make the best decision possible. Um, a lot of people aren't willing to put in the time and effort to get that information, that knowledge, and present it to you. And so that's where I find the big flaw is. So for you out there, if you're out there in any industry, make sure you have all the questions that people ask answered, and you're intelligent. You have all the facts that you can help guide them in a way that they have all the possible answers or solutions or paths in front of them, and they pick the one that's best for them. They're doing it with knowledge, and that's the only way.
Absolutely. I actually had a team member phrase it this way. He said, if I've done my job well, they won't need to ask my advice as to what they should do. I've already adequately armed them with all the information that they need to make the best decision for themselves.
And isn't that peace of mind?
Absolutely.
And that's all we want. In anything we do, peace of mind is great. Thank you, Sam, for joining me today. I think this is a big topic for a lot of people, and everyone wants to get the best results, the most money, and be better off. And what we've shown here is, if you know what your options are and you have all the facts in front of you, you can make a better decision as opposed to a worse one. And so that's the thought we'll leave you with, and hope everyone has a great day. Till next time.